Happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.
All right. Glad to see everybody here. Those online following along. Hope everybody had a blessed week. Enjoying the weather, enjoying the times we are in, staying firm in the faith, learning from our mistakes, repenting, seeking the Lord's mercy constantly. All right, so all praises. We're going to be doing part 2 of our lesson from last week, the consuming fire, the image of God versus the image that provokes, glorification of the Son, part 2. All right, so last week we've been getting into the image of God. All right, we got into the image of God. We went into Genesis. We seen Adam made in the image. We seen Satan not want to bow down to the image. All right, all creation was to bow down to the image of God. There was only one image at that time, Adam. All right, Satan didn't want to, and he begins to attack the image of God. All right, we seen him go and start to attack Eve. All right, and start to attack the feminine side of the image first. All right, and then we seen him attack Abel. All right, through Cain, and slew that image. All right, and we seen Seth get reborn in Adam's image. All right. And then we took a little glance real quick. We got the story so we understand what the whole point of the Bible is. It's about this image that's created and the violation of the image of God. All right. And how from that violation, Satan is making everybody else start to violate, and he's attacking the image in various ways, either by killing an individual or either by making the image of God set up a graven image and worship that image. All right, and then we took a little glance just real quick at Israel and what was happening there, and we took a look at a story. But today we're going to kind of get the storyline right back in play. All right, because that was like the introduction to what's going on and, you know, how it all plays out, and then a brief look at how Israel was using the graven images. But we're going to actually take a direct look now from the storyline on down, all right, and show you the whole point of this stuff is the understanding of the image of God versus the image that provokes. And the whole Bible is wrapped around this. And, you know, I didn't think it would turn to such a big lesson, but it's actually one of the biggest points of the Bible, all right, because, you know, we're going to see it come on down onto Christ now, all right, and then we're going to try to get there, but we're going to take it there from the beginning like we did with Adam, and then bring it on down, all right. So with that being said, I want to say all praises be unto the Most High Almighty, Ahaya Yeshahaya Christ, our Lord and Savior. This is the Essene Community Church of Christ. My name is Archbishop Shamar.
My name is Bishop Tabat.
And we be bringing your Sabbath report / lesson this week. All right, and it's the consuming fire, the image of God versus the image that provokes, the glorification of the Son. And we are on part 2. Now, for those who are following along with us, you might have had the document last week. I did make some changes, so we're going to be at page 9 this week. But we're going to start first at Isaiah 53, verse 1. So once again, the consuming fire of God, the image of God versus the image that provokes, the glorification of the Son, part 2. All right, so we're at Isaiah 53 and 1.
Isaiah chapter 53, verse 1. Who has believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed?
All right, so who will believe this lesson, this report? All right, Isaiah even had to ask this in his time, all right, because the people didn't believe. All right, he had to ask who's going to believe, all right, because of the way the Most High operates. He operates in secrecy. You're not seeing him just come out flat out and he's dealing with this individual. You have to have your mind open, your ears open, be able to decipher, discern that the Lord is working with somebody. All right, so this is where it comes to who believes the report. Do you believe the Lord is working? Do you believe the power of the Lord is here? Because you're not going to be able to see it. And from these stories we go into, the people always miss out because they're not paying attention. All right, they're not paying attention to what's happening when it's happening. So Isaiah's asking this, who's going to believe? Who's going to see? Who's believing? And we went into what believing is. All right, believing goes into being willing. Who's willing? All right, who's willing when they hear the report to do the things in the report? Who's willing to do what the prophet is saying that they got to do? That's what it means by who will believe the report. All right, who's willing to deal with the things in the report? All right, not just hear the report. All right, it's not the hearer of the word. All right, but the doer of the word. All right, that's what the Lord is looking at. All right, so when Isaiah's asking this, who's going to believe the report? Who's going to be willing to do the things in the reports that we've been going through? All right, because that's believing. Believing is not listening and, it's something inside. All right, it's an action, the willingness to do the things that are being presented in the lessons that are being brought forth. All right, it's not for no reason. All right, everything's in the Father's hands. So when people are not believing and having a willingness with it, all right, you might not see us say nothing, but it's the Father that's going to correct anything that happens. All right, so who's going to believe the report? Who's going to understand these reports? Because this lesson, the image of God, it starts now with, okay, looking at Satan, this, but it's going to come right down to each of us and each other and how we operate. All right, because we're learning that we're made in the image of God. And violating the image of God is violating another brother or sister. Not wanting to see another brother or sister. All right, these are the images of God. God's looking at the violation of these images. This is what we're on this lesson right now to look at. It first started with Satan, his glorious angel. He's not pardoning anybody from violations of the image of God. So this lesson is very, very important when it comes to our everyday understanding with our brother and sister, knowing what to do outside. But most importantly, it's going to come to understanding how to deal with Christ. It's going to come to understanding how to deal with Christ. It's going to come to understanding how to deal with our brothers and sisters. All right? And the things that the Father looks at as violations of the image of God. All right? So who's going to believe the report? All right? So we're going to go through the scriptures to ensure that they're interpreted, translated, and taught correctly. All right, I'm going to start at Deuteronomy 16 and 22.
Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 22. Neither shalt thou set thee up any image which the Lord thy God hateth.
All right, so neither shalt thou set thee up any image that the Lord thy God hateth. So this is what we're understanding first. All right. All right, we went to Satan, and the Most High created Adam in his image, man and woman in his image, in the image of the Godhead. Satan not wanting to worship the image. All right. Then we went into Satan trying to murder the image. And then we went into trying to make graven image. So trying to get the image to look at something else as superior and bow down to it as payback for making him want to bow down to it. And the thing is, we're understanding first that the Most High hates these violations. So whenever we come across a violation of the image of God, it's going to have that abomination or hateth because it's a violation of the image. All right, so we're at, neither shalt thou set thee up any image with the Lord thy God hated. All right, and this is his understanding of that. All right, we're going to go to Deuteronomy 27 and 14.
Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 14. And the Levites shall speak and say unto all the men of Israel with a loud voice, Cursed be the man that maketh any graven or molten image, an abomination unto the Lord, the work of the hands of the craftsman, and putteth it in a secret place. And all the people shall answer and say, Amen.
All right, so even how he had it among Israel, they made sure that everybody understood that cursed be the man that makes any graven image. All right, which is an abomination. Once again, I show you, it's going to have hated, abomination, anything that's violation of the Most High's image. That's the stuff he airily detests. He hates. He looks at those as abominations. All right, because they are major violations of his being. You're violating him because it's his image. All right. We're just going to go take a look at the details once again. We're going to go to the Jasher. We're just going to look at Cain and bring it on down to look what happened before the flood and take it back down to Israel, and then look at the beginning of Israel and go through Israel's history to understand that this is the whole emphasis of the story that we're looking at. The book of Jasher, chapter 1, verse 21.
The book of Jasher, chapter 1, verse 21. And Cain said to his brother Abel, Surely if I slay thee this day, who will require thy blood from me?
All right, so he's looking. He's like, if I kill you, who's going to require your blood? So Cain right now is not understanding that God and his stance with the image of God. He doesn't have that understanding. This is the understanding many people don't have either, because they're thinking that when you violate another individual, because remember, we're all made in the image of God, all right, where it's coming down from Adam, all right, that when you violate an individual, that God won't recompense that God doesn't look at people's violating other people, all right. And this is why in Christianity, especially, we see the harping on the loving your neighbor, all right, loving your neighbor, all right. It's heavy on loving your neighbor. Why? Because he's requiring certain things and looking at the violations of other images of God. All right, so Cain is asking, who's gonna require your blood from me? He's not understanding that the Most High is looking at violations of the image of God. All right, so continue.
Verse 22. And Abel answered Cain, saying, Surely God who has made us in the earth, he will avenge my cause, and he will require my blood from thee, shouldest thou slay me. For the Lord is the judge and arbiter, and it is he who will requite man according to his evil, and the wicked man according to the wickedness that he may do upon earth.
All right, so Abel answers him. So Cain answers a question that he don't understand, right? Abel is linked in with the Father. So he's like, you're not getting that these violations is going to require, the Lord's going to come and recompense this. I'm not worried, all right? He's the judge, he's the arbitrator. He comes and he judges between who's violating the image of God, all right? And Abel had this understanding that he's relaying back now to Cain. All right, continue for us.
Verse 23. And now, if thou wouldest slay me here, surely God knoweth thy secret views, and will judge thee for the evil which thou didst declare to do unto me this day. And when Cain heard the words which Abel his brother had spoken, behold, the anger of Cain was kindled against his brother Abel for declaring this thing.
All right, so Cain was angry that he was answering him back with these answers, all right, these spiritual understanding, the understanding of the Lord. All right, continue.
Verse 25. And Cain hastened and rose up and took the iron part of his plowing instrument, with which he suddenly smote his brother, and he slew him. And Cain split the blood of his brother Abel upon the earth, and the blood of Abel streamed upon the earth before the flock. And after this, Cain repented, having slain his brother, and he was sadly grieved, and he wept over him, and it vexed him exceedingly. And Cain rose up and dug a hole in the field, wherein he put his brother's body, and he turned the dust over it.
All right. So here we see Cain is hearing him speak these things. He's in anger. All right. And he rises up and he hits him with the iron. All right. And he splits him. And all right. And he spreads his blood. All right. And he slays the image of God and he buries the image of God. All right. So let's continue.
Verse 28. And the Lord knew what Cain had done to his brother. And the Lord appeared to Cain and said unto him, Where is Abel, thy brother that was with thee? And Cain dissembled and said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said unto him, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground where thou hast slain him.
All right. And this is what we're understanding now. So Cain, once again, he's not understanding the importance of that this is the image of God. So he's like, am I my brother's keeper? So he's like, what am I supposed to be knowing where the other individual is? All right. And it's the respect of, hey, these are the image of God. You know what? Let me look out at the image of God. I see something's going on with the fellow image of God. I'm going to help it. All right. So he's on with it. That's my brother. My brother is so be concerned with himself. Like, why are you asking me where he is? All right. Going back into, all right, we're supposed to be concerned about that. All right. I'm going to continue.
Verse 30. For thou hast slain thy brother and hast dissembled before me, and didst imagine in thy heart that I saw thee not, nor knew all thy actions. But thou didst this thing, and didst slay thy brother for naught, and because he spoke rightly to thee. And now, therefore, cursed be thou from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand, and wherein thou didst bury him. And it shall be when thou shalt till it, it shall no more give thee its strength, as in the beginning. For thorns and thistles shall the ground produce, and thou shalt be moving and wandering in the earth until the day of thy death.
All right. So here we see, all right, the Most High showing that he knows what he did to him. He knows that he put the body in the ground, all of that, and he's cursing him now because of the violation of the image of God. Cain is getting cursed, all right, and he's speaking about the ground and how what it's going to produce now, thorns, thistles, things of that nature, when he's going to till from it, all right, as punishment for what he's doing. All right, so we're going to go to Joshua 2:1. All right, and we're going to see that the story continues. So from Cain violating the image of God going down to Abel, we're going to start to see all the different violations of the image of God that brings us down to the flood. All right, so let's continue. So we're at Joshua 2:1.
Book of Joshua, chapter 2, verse 1. And it was in the 130th year of the life of Adam upon the earth, that he again knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare a son in his likeness and in his image. And she called his name Seth, saying, Because God has appointed me another seed in the place of Abel, for Cain has slain him.
All right, so she gives him a likeness, all right, another likeness of Adam. All right, so Seth is continuing once again on the image of God. He's the image of God being made because Cain slain Abel, and Abel was going and operating and being the image, while Cain started to turn into Satan's image. All right, but continue.
And Seth lived 105 years, and he begat a son, and Seth called the name of his son Enos, saying, Because in that time the sons of man began to multiply, and to afflict their souls and hearts by transgressing and rebelling against God.
All right, so now we're seeing how the story continues. So it first starts with Cain violation now. All right, we now have Enos being born up, all right, from Seth. And in his time, All right, so that's about how much years? So that's 130 years passed from Adam, then from Seth. Seth lived 105 years, so that's maybe 300 something years before people start rebelling now as a totality against the image of God. All right, they start to all go against God. They begin to multiply. They begin to afflict their souls and their hearts, and they transgress and rebel against God. And we're going to see what this rebellion that's starting to come up 300 years in now. All right, so let's go.
Verse 3. And it was in the days of Enosh that the sons of men continued to rebel and transgress against God, to increase the anger of the Lord against the sons of men. And the sons of men went and they served other gods, and they forgot the Lord who had created them in the earth. And in those days the sons of men made images of brass and iron, wood and stone, and they bowed down and served them.
All right, so this is what we're seeing now. All right, we're seeing that in these times now, the sons of men, they're starting to go and they're straying in the time of Enosh. They then go, they get brass metals, they get all these things, and they're erecting up idols, all right? The violation of the image of God, all right? So once again, we're pointing out these are major violations, all right? So this is where we can see the spread of the graven images start to go into all nations, because right now we can see all the other religions, all of that, they were dealing with graven images, all right? This is where it begins to spread through Adam's posterity, all right? And this is happening in the 300-something year now, all right? In the 150th year of Adam, in the 150th year of Seth, and Adam had Seth in his 130th year, all right? So we're coming up there to these times now, all right? So they're violating and they're making images of brass, wood, all of this stuff, and making graven gods and worshiping it, violating the image of God. All right, so let's see what happens. Continue.
Verse 5. And every man made his god, and they bowed down to them. And the sons of men forsook the Lord all the days of Enosh and his children. And the anger of the Lord was kindled on account of their works and abominations which they did in the earth. And the Lord caused the waters of the river Gihon to overwhelm them. And he destroyed and consumed them. And he destroyed the third part of the earth. And notwithstanding this, the sons of men did not turn from their evil ways, and their hands were yet extended to do evil in the sight of the Lord.
All right. So here we're seeing that once again the Lord's anger is being kindled. It's being kindled upon them. All right. And every man is making his God and bowing down to them. Once again, how we're starting to see all the different likenesses, even pre-flood, of people starting to do their idol worships. All right, this is how idol worship begins to spread. So we're seeing that it's not about really the idol worship per se. All right, it's about the image of God violations, and idol worship is one of them. All right, slewing the man is one of them as well. There's various different violations. All right, not helping the image of God is one of those as well. All right, the image of God dealing with somebody else deceitfully bad, these are all violations that God looks at. All right, but it's just going on down to show the story of how these violations begin to happen and what God is doing because of that. All right, and here once again in the days of Enosh, they took them and they forbid them, and he causes the waters of the river to overwhelm them. All right, so this is the punishment that they're getting for the violations. When you do this, we've seen that God is a zealous God. They try to put jealous, but it's zealous. And zealous means he's ready to do the thing that he said he's going to do. All right, when he means zealous. All right, he's eager to do that. All right, so once you do these things, he has to be swift with the action. And this is what we're seeing here now. All right, so he's consuming them with the waters, and he consumed them, and he destroyed a third part of the earth. So we're seeing a third part of the earth was taken down in water. That's 1/3. All right, so 1/3 of the earth, before the flood happened, the earth was already going into a flood. He warned them about a flood already. He flooded 1/3 of the earth to show them, stop the violations of the image of God. All right, but they weren't listening. So continue for us.
Verse 7. And in those days there was neither sowing nor reaping in the earth, and there was no food for the sons of men, and the famine was very great in those days. And the seed which they sowed in those days in the ground became thorns, thistles, and briars. For from the days of Adam was this declaration concerning the earth, of the curse of God, which he cursed the earth on account of the sin which Adam sinned before the Lord. And it was when men continued to rebel and transgress against God, and to corrupt their ways, that the earth also became corrupt.
All right, so the earth was becoming corrupt. There was a curse being placed down from on Adam. Adam not listening. Once again, the image of God not listening to God. All right, and when it comes down to Christ, Christ listened to everything that the Most High said. All right, and told him to do. So once again, Adam not listening, that's a violation of the image of God. A curse comes on to him for these things. All right. These are all violations of the image of God. All right, so impending punishment comes for violating the image of God. The impending punishment comes swiftly. All right, and the two major ones that we're seeing at the beginning is murder and idolatry. All right, but also not worshiping the image of God, which that's going to come down later, because right now we're dealing with now replicas of the image of God. So we're dealing with men who are also images of God. So the image of God shouldn't bow down to the image of God. All right. But now when we get to Christ, we're going to kind of understand Christ's superiorness to, what we're going to be amplifying. All right. Because in this lesson, it is the glorification of the Son. All right. So we're going to go now and see what was happening pre-flood. So we're just going to take a look at secular record, so a record that's outside of the Bible. All right, we're going to look at the book of Daizan, and this is a book from Tibet. All right, and they say they had this record, and this record is about what happened before the flood. So we're going to see what they're saying was happening before the flood in a record that's not even connected to the Bible. All right, so we're going to go at first. What is the book of Daizan?
What is the book of Dayan?
Dizan.
Or Zion?
Dizan. D-Z-Y-A-N. Dizan.
Dizian.
Dizian.
The book of Dayan is reputedly ancient text of Tibetan origin. What is Tibet? Tibet is a region on the Tibetan Plateau in Asia, northeast of the Himalayas. It is the traditional homeland of the Tibetan people, as well as some other ethnic groups such as Monpa, Kiang, and Loba peoples, and is now also inhabited by considerable numbers of Han, Chinese, and Hui people. Tibet is the highest region on Earth, with an average elevation of 4,900 meters or 16,000 feet.
So once again, so it's in the Himalayas. So the Tibetan, this is a book from the Tibetan people, and we're showing the region just to show that they're not related to the Hebrew Israelites. All right, so we're just getting the cooperation. We're just getting verification from outside source of the same thing that the Bible is saying. This is how we prove the Bible, because it's the same stories passing down from ancient times. All right, so we're gonna go to the ancient text of the ancient Tibetan book of Daizan. All right, and we're gonna bring that out.
They took wives fair to look upon, wives from the mindless, the narrow-headed. They bred monsters, wicked demons, male and female. Also, Kado, with little minds. They built temples for the human body. Male and female they worshipped. Then the third eye acted no longer. They built huge cities of rare earths and metals they build. Out of the fires vomited, out of the white stone of the mountains and of the black stone they cut their own images in their size and likeness and worshipped them.
All right. So this is what we're seeing. Them speaking about the fallen ones. So the fallen ones fell. They begin to, do these things. Enosh and them is worshiping these images. The fallen ones fall now, and the fallen ones are going to the rocks. They're taking out the rocks and they're building images in their own likeness. So this is why God is like, what the heck is going on now? We have men that's violated. We have the angels that came, violated with what? Sleeping with, the woman and sabotaging the bloodline of the image of man. We have the angels erecting up their own likeness in their image, the giants. All right, so there's a whole lot of violations happening to where we can see why the Father is like, yo, this has to be flooded out. All right, and it's flooded out for what? The violations of the image of God. This is the whole thing. It's not just, they're not listening to God. It's this big, huge topic, violating the image of God. They started to erect images and make the image of God corrupt himself. All right, corruption of the image of God. This is the problem here. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 44. They built great images, 9 yatis, or 36 feet high, the size of their bodies. Inner fires had destroyed the land of their fathers. The water threatened the fourth. The first great waters came. They swallowed the 7 great islands. All holy saved, the unholy destroyed. With them, most of the huge animals.
All right, so we're seeing here, they talk about the little flood first, a little thing happening, and then they're talking about a major one happening. All right, the same thing that we're seeing in the Bible. All right, we're seeing in our next region, the Himalayas, their record about what happened pre-flood. All right. And what the giants were doing. So I was like, I was going to go to Enoch, but you know what? Let's cooperate. We already know what happened there. Let's go to a next record to show that it's showing the same thing that's happening in the earth, in these places. All right? They're doing with the image of God violations, setting up images to worship male, female. All right? Then the giants setting up images in their likeness. All right? Then them violating and corrupting the bloodline. And then them violating and corrupting creation. The place had to get washed out. All right, and we see them mention the huge animals going back to the dinosaurs. All right, so this is going right back to what we're speaking about. The water threatened the earth because of these violations of the image of God. God had to take one thing and restart everything because of these violations. All right, they were mounting up. All right, so we're going to go now. All right. And we're just going to take it down back now to the time of the kingdom. All right, we're going to start with Solomon. All right, so we're going to start with Solomon because David, he never violated the king. He never violated the image of God. All right, so we're starting with Solomon, his son, and we're going to see what the story starts to tell us, and then we're going to break it on down from there in the story of Israel. All right, so we're bringing it right back. So we just went back to the beginning a little bit. We did that last week where we already went to the beginning. This was to give us a little more understanding, and then we're now starting here at the time of Solomon, his kingship, and showing the difference between him and his father and what begins to happen in Israel on down. All right, so we're at... All right, and it actually starts with Saul. So Saul was there first, and we see what happened with Saul. Saul didn't listen about the Amalekites, and that goes back to Adam's first violation, all right, not listening to God, all right, the image not listening, he was removed from his kingship, all right, and this is what puts David in place, And now we're at Solomon, and we're going to see the difference between David and Solomon. 1 Kings 11 and 1.
1 Kings chapter 11, verse 1. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, Ye shall not go in to them, neither shall they come in unto you. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love.
All right, so we're seeing Solomon now is starting to begin to love these Gentile nations that God warned him about, because he's telling them that, hey, these Gentile nations, what do? They violate the image of God. You're going to start to do what they were doing before the flood. All of these things, they're going to start to turn your heart away. We went and looked at what turn your heart away is. We've seen that they begin to worship and do all of these different violations of the image of God, all right, and not come back to him. All right, so he told Israel not to do this, and Solomon is beginning to love the woman who he warned them about. All right, so let's continue.
Verse 3. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God. And was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abominations of the Ammonites.
All right, so we're seeing Solomon starts to go after them, all right? He starts to go, and he's getting old, and his wives turn away his heart after other gods. They have him going and violating the image of God with the idolatry. And this is his wives that go and do this, all right? Turn his heart away, all right? And it shows that his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. That's why we're not looking at David. We're not starting at David. David's heart was perfect. He never dealt with no idol worship. He wasn't dealing with that violations, all right? Solomon comes now, and he's beginning the violations in Israel. This is what's beginning the violations, all right? The heavy violations, all right? Saul didn't listen. He just had this independently. He's removed from there because he didn't listen to the command that the Lord told him. The one command he told him, just like he told Adam the one command, all right? But Adam wasn't going and doing the abominations, all right, which is, hey, you're worshiping the other image, or this is when it goes to greater violations of the image of God. Solomon was not perfect in his heart like David was, all right? He begins to stray after his woman's gods, all right? And he goes after Ashtoreth, who we know that's the name where they get Easter from, all right? And he starts to go after these abominations. See, we're seeing abomination these because he's like, these are wicked acts against the violation of the image, against the image of God, all right? So continue for us.
Verse 6. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father. Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods.
All right, so here we're seeing here, all right, all these he's calling them abominations of the different nations, because this is their violations of the image of God, which he looks at as abominations, heavy violations, all right. And Solomon, of all people, we're seeing Solomon fell to this violations of the image of God, all right. So as much as God would love Solomon, he told him to do this, we're going to see that, hey, impending punishment must come for these things, All right. God must recompense for this. He's worshiping how much different gods that he set up buildings and stuff for. All right. Ashtaroth, which is Easter, Chemosh. He's going down to even Molech. All right. The owl that everyone see Drake dealing with. All right. So we're seeing these different things here. All right. So we're going to continue to 1 Kings 11 and 9.
1 Kings chapter 11, verse 9. And the Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice. And he had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods, but he kept not that which the Lord commanded.
All right. So we're seeing the Lord appeared to him twice, warned him twice to tell him, yo, don't do this thing, Solomon. Solomon didn't listen. He took the woman. The woman took his heart from the Lord into their gods, into violations of the image of God. Continue for us.
Verse 11. Wherefore the Lord said unto Solomon, forasmuch as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant.
All right, so this is the beginning of, all right, the kingdom of Israel is under one king. He's like, you know what? For this violation of the image of God, I'm sorry, Solomon, I'm renting the kingdom. I'm giving it into the hand of your servant. All right, so he's saying, I'm taking the kingdom now. All right, I'm taking the kingdom from you, Solomon. I'm going to give it to your servant for this violation of the image of God. Continue.
Notwithstanding, in thy days, I will not do it for David thy father's sake, but I will rend it out of the hand of thy son.
All right, so he's saying once again, David, perfect in heart. He's like, David, love you. You're his son. You know what? For David's sake, it ain't gonna happen in your time. All right, but your next generation, it's gonna happen to them. All right, so continue.
Verse 13. Howbeit, I will not rend away all the kingdom, but will give one tribe to thy son for David, my servant's sake.
All right, so he's like, David, he was running the thing. David needs an empire, people to control. Once again, for David's sake. This is why God's like, you know what? I can't do the full punishment of the violation of the image of God. All right, so, you know what I mean? One tribe left for you, brother. For David's, my servant's sake. You know what I mean? Or you would have lost that whole thing now. All right, because once again, impending punishment. God is not playing when it comes to violations of the image of God. All right, and there's the different various violations that we're going through. All right, so continue.
And for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen. And the Lord stirred up an adversary unto Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. He was of the king's seed in Edom. For it came to pass, when David was in Edom, and Joab, the captain of the host, was gone up to bury the slain, after he had smitten every male in Edom.
All right, so we're seeing here that howbeit he's not going to rend away. He's going to give one for his servant David's sake. All right, and for Jerusalem's sake, which he's chosen. But also, God stirred up an adversary. So once again, penalty has to come. So because Solomon did this, all right, he's sending him an adversary. Edom, he's like, yo, Edom's coming now for you, brother. Like, yo, king's coming. So these are what God does for the punishment. He takes away the kingdom from him, and he says, yo, you have an enemy now. He's coming for you. He's coming to done you. All right. All right, so we're seeing it's no joke. So now he's like, yo, what? I have to deal with Edom now. Like, Edom might coming for me now because of this violation. So God's not going to come and beat you. He's using other people to do it for him, all right? He's using them as the whipping stick, the beating stick, all right? So we're going to go now to 1 Kings 11 and 23.
This is page 13, 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 23. And God stirred him up another adversary, Rezon, the son of Eliada, which fled from his lord Hadadezer, king of Zobah.
All right, so God stirred him up another it's impending penalty, like I said, serious violation. All right, kingdom out of your hand, stir up Edom, king of Edom coming for you. He's thinking, all right, boom, I just got to deal with that. Another stirred up enemy, second adversary coming now. This is no game playing. Violations of the image of God comes with penalty. All right, continue.
And he gathered men unto him, and became captain over a band, when David slew them from Zobah. And they went to Damascus, and dwelt therein, and reigned in Damascus. And he was an adversary to Israel all the days of Solomon, beside the mischief that Hadad did. And he abhorred Israel, and reigned over Syria.
All right, so in all the days of Solomon, these people were warring against him because of the things Solomon did. Once again, impending penalty happening because of the major violation of the image of God. All right, penalty is taking place. All right, adversaries is coming forth against Solomon. All right, when he was building the temple and doing all of that, he was living in peace. He didn't have there's nobody bothering him. He had a peaceful time. When you spoke about Solomon at a certain point in time, it was very peaceful. But you see, when he got old, he violated the image of God, and now he's not living in peace anymore. He's living in war, adversaries, kingdom about to be rent out of his hand. Things is happening because he didn't understand the warning God gave him. All right, so let's continue.
Verse 26. And Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephrathite of Zereda, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow woman, even he lifted up his hand against the king.
All right, so Jeroboam now is the servant that Most High said that, your servant's going to take the kingdom from you. All right, so Jeroboam is rising up against him. Now, Solomon's having all these problems start because he didn't understand God's serious about you violating the image of God. All right, and this is why we're going through the different violations. So his violation was he worshiped other image. So someone might be like, you know what? I don't violate the other image. We're going to get to the part that's going to start to touch closer to the home of us. It's not going to get there yet. We first have to understand the history of there. When it comes and touches closer to where, you know what, now we have to be careful of what we're actually doing and how we're operating. All right, we'll continue.
Verse 27. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Milo, and repaired the branches of the city of David his father. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor. And Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph.
All right, so the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor, and Solomon, seeing that he was like this, he made him ruler over the house of Joseph. So this is how that kingdom begins to get a next king, and it's the servant of Solomon, Jeroboam. Because of what Solomon did, this is able to happen, and this is the beginning of the kingdom being split into two different factions. All right, so continue for us.
And it came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah and the Shilonite found him in the way, and he had clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him, and rent it in 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, Take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee.
All right, so this is how we see the 10 tribes it's split. It's from the violation of the image of God. He tells this, his servant that, hey, this is what's going to happen. He's in the new clothes. Ahijah takes him, rents it, puts it in 12, tells him take 10. The Lord's giving you 10 tribes. of the kingdom. All right. And this is the split that happens. The split happens because of the violation of the image of God. So we're getting a clear, we know this history, but we're getting to understand it and see it more in depth on why this stuff is transpiring and how it's transpiring. And also knowing that this is the whole reason why the Most High is writing these records, so that you can understand the violations of the image of God. All the other stuff is like, all details in this, but the major detail here is the image of God violations that they're showing you on down, happening from Adam on down. All right, from Adam being created, from Satan moving all the way on down to the flood, to after the flood, to the kingdom of Israel coming on down. We're going to get to live and direct modern time. So continue for us.
1 Kings chapter 11, verse 32. But he shall have one tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, because that they have forsaken me and have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways to do that which is right in mine eyes, and to keep my statutes and my judgments, as did David his father. Howbeit, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life for David my servant's sake, whom I choose, because he kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand, and I will give it to thee, even 10 tribes.
All right, so we're seeing, all right, that this is happening once again. Why is it happening? Because they're forsaken, because he's going to Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonites, Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, Milcom, the god of the Ammon. Walk not in his ways to do that which is right in his eyes, keep his statutes and his judgments as his father did. This is why this is happening to Solomon. And God, you don't think he loves Solomon? We read about the wisdom of Solomon. He gave him wisdom. He loved that he asked for these things, and he still had to give Solomon a punishment. All right, because these are violations that he warns about, and this is what he's saying here. Like, I told him these things. Howbeit, all right, he's not going to take the whole kingdom once again. All right, but he gonna keep him one tribe. All right, but all the other tribes is going to Jeroboam now. So continue for us.
Verse 36. And unto his son will I give one tribe, that David my servant may have a light always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there. And I will take thee, and thou shalt reign according to all that thy soul desireth, and shalt be king over Israel. And it shall be, if thou wilt hearken unto all that I command thee, and wilt walk in my ways, and do that is right in my sight, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with thee, and build thee a sure house, as I built for David, and will give Israel unto thee. And I will for this afflict the seed of David, but not forever. Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt, unto Shishak, king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. And the rest of the acts of Solomon, and all that he did, and his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the acts of Solomon? And the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. And Solomon slept with his fathers, and was buried in the city of David his father. And Rehoboam his son reign in his stead.
All right. So here we're seeing that God is showing Jeroboam that, hey, now you're in position, you got to do these things that David did, such and such. I'll build you a sure house. I'll do all of this for you. All right. And he's telling him that, yo, God's not even done yet. God's afflicting the seed line of David now because of this. Like, he put out how much adversaries he sent for Solomon. All right. He split the kingdom. Now he's punishing the whole seed line. All right. So these are serious violations where we're trying to see that God's not playing with the image of God. All right. So he's did a lot of punishment. All right. And this is how Jeroboam gets put in place. And Solomon's so angry. And Solomon was a humble man. He's so angry about this judgment that he wants to do something to Jeroboam. Jeroboam has to run until Solomon dies. All right. And then his son Rehoboam is coming in his place now. So this is where we are in the story. All right. So we see that enemy rival is sent for punishment, for provoking, image worship, impending penalty, image of God violations are serious consequences. Desolation comes near when this is happening. All right. Can be stopped or calmed by repentance. So you could calm it or stop it in some way, but God is still issuing out the penalty. All right. All right, so we're going to go to 1 Kings 12 and 16.
1 Kings chapter 12, verse 16. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, What portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel, now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. But as for the children of Israel which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them.
All right, so the other Israel, they start to go away from, the kingdom, and Rehoboam is reigning over those who are staying at Jerusalem, in the cities of Judah. All right, and those are who he's going to reign over. Everybody else stops listening to them, and they're gone to their own place, and they're about to have their own separate thing. All right, so continue.
Verse 18. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute, and all Israel stoned him with stones, that he died. Therefore King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee to Jerusalem.
All right, so here we're seeing, all right, what's happening. The king Rehoboam sending Adoram, all right, to give tribute, and Rehoboam, all right, is speeding up to get him, all right, and go to Jerusalem. So we're going to see now. Continue.
Verse 19. So Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day. And it came to pass, when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was come again, that they sent and called him unto the congregation, and made him king over all Israel. There was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only.
All right. So this is what's happening now. Israel rebelled against David on that time. So Jeroboam, he hid. He was hiding in Egypt. So they were just rebelling against David and his house and said, we're not listening to you. And they're just doing their own thing. And only one tribe was listening. But Jeroboam makes his way back now. They see him now. And what's fulfilled now, he's placed as king over them. All right. And they never was dealing with Judah again. All right. And David's house is only ruling the tribe of Judah. All right now. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 21. And when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen men, which were warriors, to fight against the house of Israel, to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon.
All right, so Rehoboam is like, he's like, we'll get the Benjamites, pick up with Benjamin. Benjamin is Benjamin, and Benjamin's so strong, he's like, we could go take them down and bring them back. to the kingdom back to us. All right, this is their plot that, yo, we're going to go bring the kingdom back. But continue.
But the word of God came unto Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, Speak unto Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and unto all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the remnant of the people, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Ye shall not go up, nor fight against your brethren, the children of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me.
All right, so the Lord sees him. He goes on to a man of God, sends the word of the Lord unto him, tells the word of the Lord, go on to the cities, go on, tell Judah, Benjamin. All right, yo, don't go do what you're doing. Don't go up, don't go fight, don't go do nothing against your brethren. All right, this thing that you see is from me. Punishment from the violating the image of God coming from Solomon, that's coming on down to all of y'all, when y'all are probably like, yo, but I didn't do nothing. This is how serious the penalty is. It's coming on down to everyone's feeling it. All right, and now they want to go take the stuff back, bring it back to them, and God's like, yo, don't you think of it. This is the penalty that I put down here. Don't you go challenge, try to bring back nothing, sway Benjamin, and go take down anything. All right, so God's serious once again about the violations of the image of God that we're seeing passed down. This is what splits up Israel and does all of this. And this is from Solomon, who we love. We have writings of Solomon, all of this stuff, right? But he still violated. Right? So continue for us.
They hearkened therefore to the word of the Lord, and returned to depart according to the word of the Lord.
All right. So they returned. All right. They hearkened and they listened. So we're going to now go and take a look at Jeroboam. So once again, we're just tagging along the storyline to see how the violations begin to go down. So we're going to go and take a look at Jeroboam. We're at 1 Kings 12 and 25.
1 Kings chapter 12, verse 25. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim, and dwelt therein, and went out from thence, and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, Now shall the kingdom return to the house of David, if this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem. Then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam king of Judah. And they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam king of Judah.
All right, so he's worried right now. So, and this is stuff he's saying in his own heart. So this is stuff he's feeling. It's not something's happened. He's saying in his heart, yo, these guys are going to go, you know what I mean, up to this place, all right, and they're going to go and do sacrifices at the temple. So he's worried about them going to do sacrifice at the spot that Moses gave them, the same place the temple was built. He's worried about them going over there, and because they're going to offer sacrifice over there, that they're going to begin to love over there again and go back over there when God already told him the kingdom's in his hand. So he's worrying in his own head when there's nothing to worry about. All right, so he's like, this is going to happen. They're going to go over there to worship at the temple, and they're going to fall back in love with the kingdom of Judah, and I'm going to lose the power. All right, so he's thinking in his head that I'm going to build something. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 28. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt.
All right, so this is what the brother is doing here. Jeroboam just got the kingdom, everything. He started the violations again. His own worries has him. And he's thinking that they're going to go worship God at the temple over there, and they're going to forget me. So he doesn't even set up a temple here and says, you know what, come worship God here. He's like, here, these are your gods from Israel. Here is the idols again, all right? Sets up the graven images in the land again, all right? So this you can see how this keeps happening now. God's trying to stop all of this, and this brother is not even thinking, and he didn't even think, yo, let me set one up. You can worship God over here. He's like, yo, I'm going to set them up the same images that they fell to, the golden calf, and here Israel, here's your gods again. All right, so this is Jeroboam doing this, so continue.
Verse 29. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan.
All right, so he set one in Bethel and he put one in Dan. And we're going to see Dan a little bit, all right? Well, we see he set up Dan. He put it in Dan's place, all right? And this thing became a sin. How is it a sin? We showed you. Violations of the image of God. They're doing it again when he just tried to clean this up from Solomon, all right? But continue for us.
Verse 31. And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi.
All right, so all this has happened in Israel, right? But what we have to understand in the story is that Levi is not joining in any of this. All right, so this is happening amongst them. They don't have one of God's priests. They're using their own priests to do these things. All right, so continue for us.
And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. And he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. So he offered upon the altar which he had made in Bethel the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel. And he offered upon the altar and burnt incense.
All right, so he started to sacrifice and do these certain things, all right? And he was doing this at the same time that there was a feast happening in Judah, all right? This is the first time he did the sacrifice. He's like, oh, they're supposed to go over there to worship. Let me do it over here instead, all right? So this is what we see transpire there. Yeah, so we're at 1 Kings 13 and 1.
1 Kings chapter 13, verse 1. And behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel, and Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense.
All right, so there came a man of God, and he's coming from Judah. All right, and they're there burning incense. Once again, a lot of burning of incense was happening, but now they're doing it to a false god now, all right, not in the temple of God. But continue.
And he cried against the altar in the word of the Lord, and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name, and upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee.
All right, so he's saying, look, all right, behold, a child's going to be born out of the house of David, Josiah by name, and he's going to offer the priests of high places that burn incense, and they're going to be burnt. So he's saying these guys are going to be burnt up. All right, but continue.
Verse 3. And he gave a sign the same day, saying, this is the sign which the Lord has spoken. Behold, the altar shall be rent, and the ashes that are upon it shall be poured out. And it came to pass, when King Jeroboam heard the saying of the man of God, which had cried against the altar in Bethel, that he put forth his hand from the altar, saying, lay hold on him. And his hand, which he put forth against him, dried up, so that he could not pull it in again to him. The altar also was rent, and the ashes poured out from the altar, according to the sign which the man of God had given by the word of the Lord. And the king answered and said unto the man of God, entreat now the face of the Lord thy God, and pray for me, that my hand may be restored me again. And the man of God besought the Lord, and the king's hand was restored him again, and became as it was before. And the king said unto the man of God, Come home with me and refresh thyself, and I will give thee a reward. And the man of God said unto the king, If thou wilt give me half thine house, I will not go in with thee, neither will I eat bread nor drink water in this place. For so was it charged me by the word of the Lord, saying, Eat no bread, nor drink water, nor turn again by the same way that thou camest. So he went another way, and returned not by the way that he came to Bethel.
All right, so here we see that the king tried to touch that man of God. His arm starts to shrivel and dry up. All right, the altar gets rent. These things are happening. God's given the sign that he told the man that would happen. The king asks him to, pray for him. All right, and his hand be restored. The man of God asks for it to be restored. It's restored to him. All right. And then he wants a reward to give him a refresh, but he's saying, hey, I can't eat no bread. I can't do none of these things until I go and give this warning. All right. So we're going to continue to 1 Kings 13 and 11.
1 Kings chapter 13, verse 11. Now there dwelt an old prophet in Bethel, and his sons came and told him all the works that the man of God had done that day in Bethel, the words which he had spoken unto the king. Them they told also to their father. And their father said unto them, What way went he? For his sons had seen what way the man of God went, which came from Judah. And he said unto his sons, Saddle me the ass. So they saddled him the ass, and he rode thereon, and went after the man of God, and found him sitting under an oak. And he said unto him, Art thou the man of God that camest from Judah? And he said, I am. Then he said unto him, Come home with me and eat bread. And he said, I may not return with thee, nor go in with thee, neither will I eat bread nor drink water with thee in this place. For it was said to me by the word of the Lord, Thou shalt eat no bread nor drink the water there, nor turn again to go by the way that thou camest. He said unto him, I am a prophet also, as thou art. And an angel spake unto me by the word of the Lord, saying, Bring him back with thee into thine house, that he may eat bread and drink water. But he lied unto him.
All right, so this is what we're seeing now. This man is coming to take the man of God off of his mission from what he's doing and to make him eat. And, he's telling him come and eat, and he's telling him he can't eat. And now he's saying, I'm a prophet. The angel came and told me, come back to the house. So this is why we have to be like, why the scripture gives warning. No matter, no angel, no nothing. If God don't come and tell you the reverse of what he's saying, then you don't reverse what he's saying for nobody, no angel, no prophet, no nothing. All right, because when we're coming to say, thus saith the Lord, says it in this very, not somebody has said, not an angel said, not this person said. When we're stating something, we're saying the Lord said, the Lord is saying, the Lord is showing, the Lord is doing. We're not changing that up for what an angel is. So he's like, all right, I'm a prophet. Angel told me such and such. All right, but he's lying. All right, but continue.
Verse 19. So we went back with him, and did eat bread in his house, and drank water. And it came to pass, as they sat at the table, that the word of the Lord came unto the prophet that brought him back. And he cried unto the man of God that came from Judah, saying, Thus saith the Lord, for as much as thou hast disobeyed the mouth of the Lord, and hast not kept the commandment which the Lord thy God commanded thee, but camest back and has eaten the bread and drunk the water in the place of the which the Lord did say to thee, Eat no bread and drink no water, thy carcass shall not come unto the sepulchre of thy fathers. And it came to pass, after he had eaten bread and after he had drunk, that he saddled for him the ass, to wit, for the prophet whom had brought back. And when he was gone, a lion met him by the way and slew him, and his carcass was cast in the way. As the ass stood by it, the lion also stood by the carcass. And behold, men passed by, and saw the carcass cast in the way, and the lion standing by the carcass. And they came and told it in the city where the old prophet dwelt. And when the prophet that brought him back from the way heard thereof, he said, It is the man of God who was disobedient unto the word of the Lord. Therefore, the Lord has delivered him unto the lion, which has torn him and slain him, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake unto him.
All right, so we see here, this was just the man of God. We just seen a man of God given a mission, go do this and that, go warn these people about the violation of the image of God. Don't eat these things until you go there. He may allow somebody to turn them away from that mission, and we see the initial violation that Adam did, which is not listening to a command of God. He violates the image of God by not listening to the command of God. God now has to punish this man who was just said a man of God sent unto the people, and he's getting eaten up by a lion carcass. Once again, these warnings are very serious. The man is getting a warning to send unto the people, and he goes and does something again. All right, and God is showing that he's serious about these violations. All right, so this man of God is ate up by not listening to the one command, right? Because that's, you're going to see that these images are going to bring us back to Christ, and that's going to be like, hey, like saying Christ didn't listen to what God said, okay? When he listened to everything God said, all right? Man is supposed to listen to what their father's telling them, all right? And that's one of the greatest things too, because when you look at shows or whatever, when your father tells you something, you know, especially people that's in tune and close with their fathers, from what I see, they listen to their fathers. They're like, oh, my father told me this, that. And if their father dies, they're like, they're on like all the words that their father said. Like, I have to do this that my father said. I have to do this. My father always wanted to do this. And this is when they have like that good father-son bond. They're in their lives, they grow up, all of that. They're like, yo, that's my father. I have to fulfill these things my father is saying. All right, and that's what God is expecting from us when he tells us to do something. So here the man of God is not fulfilling what he's supposed to do, and a lion eats him up. All right, so we're going to go to 1 Kings 14:1, and we're going to see what happens to Jeroboam, who the violations is coming from. All right, the initial violation. So we're at 1 Kings 14:1.
1 Kings chapter 14, verse 1. At that time, Abijah, the son of Jeroboam, fell sick. And Jeroboam said to his wife, Arise, I pray thee, and disguise thyself, that thou be not known to be the wife of Jeroboam. And get thee to Shiloh. Behold, there is Ahijah the prophet, which told me that I should be king over this people.
All right. So, all right, Jeroboam is telling his wife to go and hide and go there to Ahijah, all right, and he's going to tell him he's going to be king over this people, that he's going to be king. Jeroboam is going to be king over these people, and he's telling his wife on a mission, so we're going to see exactly what transpires. So continue.
And take with thee 10 loaves, and cracknels, and a cruse of honey, and go to him. He shall tell thee what shall become of the child. And Jeroboam's wife did so, and arose, and went to Shiloh, and came to the house of Ahijah. But Ahijah could not see, for his eyes were set by reason of his age. And the Lord said unto Ahijah, Behold, the wife of Jeroboam cometh to ask a thing of thee for her son, for he is sick.
All right, so his son is sick. He's coming to ask this thing. Continue.
Thus and thus shalt thou say unto her, for it shall be, when she cometh in, that she shall feign herself to be another woman, And it was so, when Ahijah heard the sound of their feet, as she came in the door, that he said, Come in, thou wife of Jeroboam. Why feignest thou thyself to be another? For I am sent to thee with heavy tidings.
All right, so she's trying to come and get a declaration for the son, but not allow him to know that that's Jeroboam's wife, because they're afraid of the impending penalty that might be coming, and she don't want it to come on the son. And the angel coming, and the Lord comes and lets Ahijah know that this is what's happening. And Ahijah's like, yo, Jeroboam, I know this is you. You're Jeroboam's wife. I know this is you. Why are you trying to be like another woman right now? Once again, they know the violation they did, so they're trying to hide from this, but still want to know what's going to happen to her son. All right? But continue.
Verse 7. Go tell Jeroboam, thus saith the Lord God of Israel. For as much as I exalted thee from among the people, and made thee prince over my people Israel, and rent the kingdom away from the house of David, and gave it thee, and yet thou hast not been as my servant David, who kept my commandments, and who followed me with all his heart, to do that only which was right in mine eyes. But thou hast done evil above all that were before thee. For thou hast gone and made thee other gods and molten images to provoke me to anger, and hast cast me behind thy back.
All right, so once again, these things provoke God to anger. All right, and this is what the lesson is about. The image of God versus the image that provokes. And we see here, he's setting up molten images of other gods, violating the image of God, provoking God to anger over these things that he's zealous over. All right, quick to execute action over. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 10. Therefore, behold, I will bring evil upon the house of Jeroboam, and will cut off from Jeroboam him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel, and will take away the remnant of the house of Jeroboam, as a man taketh away dung, till it be all gone. Him that dieth of Jeroboam in the city shall the dogs eat, and him that dieth in the field shall the fowls of the air eat. For the Lord has spoken it.
All right, so he just seen Solomon, David, the beloved one, the whole house get taken down. And he knew that the afflictions came upon his children and stuff. And this is why when his child's falling sick, he's sending his wife to go find out about it. Because he's worried, is the Most High going to punish my children and this and that? You damn right. He just punished David's seed line, who he loved. All right. So now Jeroboam, who's not even of that, his whole seed line done now. All right. And those that in the field, the bird gonna eat. Those in the city, all right, the dog's gonna eat. All right. And your whole family line wiping out because you didn't listen about the violations of the image of God. These are serious things. This is a serious topic that we're on right now. We're getting to see how serious he is by looking at the players. We've seen a man of God. We've seen David, who didn't do nothing. His seed line get inflicted because one of his children. We've seen Solomon, who had wisdom and all of this stuff and deal with the Most High. Most High punished him, sent him 2 rivalries, split the kingdom, did a whole bunch of things. All right, this is not a game. And Jeroboam sees what happened. He's not even supposed to be king. You're not even supposed to be king. This miracle happened for you to be king, and you did this. God has no mercy for that. All right, this is why a dog and bird are going to eat up all their corpse and carcasses, because God's not playing no game. All right, he's not playing any games. This is not a game. People might think this is a game, but the things that are going to be transpiring in people's lives and all of that is all based on violations of the image of God. All right, this is why we're on this topic. We're at these further ones where I don't believe anyone's idol worshiping, doing these things, but we're going to get to the ones that touch closer to home as we go further in the lesson, all right, and see how close we can be to God's anger of these violations. All right, so we're going to continue.
Verse 12. Arise thou therefore, get thee to thine own house, and when thy feet enter into the city, the child shall die. And all Israel shall mourn for him and bury him. For he only of Jeroboam shall come to the grave, because in him there is found some good thing toward the Lord God of Israel in the house of Jeroboam. Moreover, the Lord shall raise him up a king over Israel, who shall cut off the house of Jeroboam that day. But what? Even now. For the Lord shall smite Israel, as a reed is shaken in the water, and he shall root up Israel out of this good land, which he gave to their fathers, and shall scatter them beyond the river, because they have made their groves, provoking the Lord to anger. And he shall give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, who did sin, and who made Israel to sin.
Right, so Jeroboam started to make Israel to sin. He was the one. And even to go here, God said for his son, give him a grave, all right, because there's some good in him, all right. So this is what I'm showing. The penalty is serious, that, none of his kindred, none of his family line got graves. Where he's like, that kid, that one that's about to die, give him a grave, because there's some good in him. He's not living, though. He's just getting a grave site. All right, to show you that these are serious violations of the image of God, all right. God is not playing with these violations, all right. This is what I'm kind of seeing here and getting to, really amplify that God is serious about this. And now from Jeroboam, he already now put the whole thing onto Israel. He made Israel sin, and now he's already have an impending penalty on Israel. We're going to see how this all transpires.
So when
right.
you don't have when you don't have a grief, basically you have the remembrance basically at the end of the day, right?
Say that again?
Because they were eaten by the dogs and the cock or the birds, right? They didn't have like any remembrance.
Yeah. There's no grave site. There's no nothing someone could come and be like, hey,
He respects you, whatever.
All right, so this is what's transpired. All right, so we're going to go to the book of Josephus. All right, we're going to go to book 8. All right, and we're going to take a look at an excerpt, all right, in the history of these times. All right, and it's going to bring us to Jeroboam and what happened in that time.
The book of Josephus, book 8, chapter 8. Upon the death of Solomon, the people forsook his son Rehoboam and ordained Jeroboam king over the 10 tribes. Excerpt. And I will ordain for you certain priests and Levites from among yourselves, that you may have no want of the tribe of Levi, or of the sons of Aaron. But let him that is desirous among you of being a priest bring to God a bullock and a ram, which they say Aaron the first priest brought also. When Jeroboam had said this, he deluded the people and made them to revolt from the worship of their forefathers and to transgress their laws. This was the beginning of miseries to the Hebrews, and the cause why they were overcome in war by foreigners, and so fell into captivity. But we shall relate those things in their proper places hereafter.
All right, so through the Josephus, he's giving you another look at the Jeroboam stuff. We already noticed he made them worship the calves and all of that, but he puts here the emphasis that this is the beginning of miseries to the Hebrews. All right, and the cause why they're overcome by foreigners, so invaders, and also why they go into captivity. This all stems from violating the image of God, as we're seeing. And Satan violated it. Cain violated it. There's many violators of the image of God. All right, there's different ones. All right, Satan, major violation. Cain, major violation. All right. So we're seeing this transpire, and we're seeing the beginning of miseries starts to happen to the Hebrews because of this. All right, so it starts to happen to the Hebrews because of these violations. And this is what we have to understand that's transpiring. Everything is going back to violations of the image of God, and I won't stop harping on that. All right, so we're going to go to 1 Kings 15 and 1, and we're going to go see Abijam, who was king of Judah. All right, and he's going to come into place now.
1 Kings chapter 15 verse 1. Now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, reigned Abijam over Judah.
All right, so Abijam. So we had Jeroboam there. But remember, there's kingship happening in Judah too. So we're now going to see what's happening among Judah and them on the other side. All right, but continue.
3 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. And he walked in all the sins of his father, which he had done before him, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, and the heart of David his father. Nevertheless, for David's sake, did the Lord his God give him a lamp in Jerusalem to set up his son after him, and to establish Jerusalem. Because David did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, and turned not aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, save only in the matter of Uriah the Hittite.
All right, so the Uriah the Hittite one, and that's not really you see what I'm saying? Because he punished David for that because it was a violation, but he didn't really violate the image of God, because he's going to another nation that's dealing with a whole other thing, and the Most High knows that he did that, but he's not looking at that as the major violation of the image of God. All right.
We had two as well in his life after that first child died. Solomon came through that woman.
Okay, yeah, so Solomon came through all of that. So we see that, he has a little leniency on what happened in that part. And, all right, out of that, a righteous image of God came out. So he can't be that angry with, what transpired.
After David repented.
Yeah, after he repented. All right, the water. All right, so let's continue for us.
Verse 6. And there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life.
All right, so the two kingdoms were warring. All right, Rehoboam going back into the Judah, and Jeroboam going back into the the servant that went over the kingdom of Israel. All right, but we're going to go now to 1 Kings 15 and 9. And all right, we're going to see another king start to rise up in Judah.
1 Kings chapter 15 verse 9. And in the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, reigned Asa over Judah. And 41 years reigned he in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. And Asa did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, as did David his father. And he took away the Sodomites out of the land, and removed all the idols that his father had made.
All right, so here we're seeing Asa, all right, he is now doing right in the eyes of the Lord. All right, he took Sodomites out of the land, violators of the image of God. All right, he's taking the idols that the fathers made out of the land. All right, all violators of the image of God. All right, and he's cleaning this stuff up. All right, so continue.
Verse 13. And also Maacah, his mother, even her he removed from being queen, because she had made an idol in a grove. And Asa destroyed her idol and burnt it by the brook Kidron.
All right, so also Maacah, his mother, even her, he moved from being a queen. So I've seen this, I'm like, oh, there's a queen. All right, but he removed her because she making an idol in a grove, and he destroyed her idol and did this. And this is his own mother. All right, so continue.
Verse 14. But in the high places were not removed, but the high places were not removed. Nevertheless, Asa's heart was perfect with the Lord all his days.
All right, so he didn't remove the high places, but his heart wasn't in dealing with anything other than the Most High. All right, so continue for us.
And he brought in the things which his father had dedicated, and the things which himself had dedicated, into the house of the Lord, silver and gold and vessels. And there was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days.
All right, so there's war between Asa, who's doing the right thing, and we have Baasha, king of Israel. They're over there doing their stuff, their violations, and this is what's happening. War between the two kingdoms because of this stuff. But continue.
And Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and built Ramah, and that he might not suffer any to go out or come into Asa, king of Judah.
All right, so once again, the king is building, and what they're building temples and places of worship so that the people, his people, who's Israel, doesn't go into Judah to go worship at the temple. This is how the idol worship begins to happen again. So he's over there like, yo, I don't like this guy over there. I don't want them to go to Judah to worship. So I don't know why the kings are not saying, hey, I could build God a spot too. Or maybe they're like, because God said this is the only spot, I have to go to another God now. Now it just makes sense to build God another spot and violate that instead of going to deal with another God. But he's like, yo, because God wants to be in that spot, I need to create a new God and a new spot for these people to come here to worship instead of going to Judah. So he doesn't want them to go over there. Once again, they're worrying about losing their followers by their follower having to go into Judah to worship. So by avoiding worship in Judah, he believes that they'll keep the kingdom better. And this is a wrong thought, that God's going to separate the kingdom from them. All right, and this is what's happening. So he built Ramah so that they might not go out and go down to the king of Judah and worship in that temple in the Jerusalem. All right, but continue.
Verse 18. Then Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and delivered them into the hands of his servants. And King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, the son of Tabriman, the son of Hizion, king of Syria, that dwelt at Damascus, saying, there is a league between me and thee, and between my father and thy father. Behold, I have sent unto thee a present of silver and gold. Come and break thy league with Baasha, king of Israel, that he may depart from me. So Ben-Hadad hearkened unto King Asa, and sent the captains of the hosts which he had against the cities of Israel, and smote Ijon, and Dan, and Abel Beth Maacah, and all Sinneroth, with all the land of Naphtali. And it came to pass, when Baasha heard thereof, that he left off building of Ramah, and dwelt in Tirzah.
All right, so Asa went to the king down in Syria, and he said, hey, we have, we have a covenant with you. Here's some more gold, some silver. Break your league with Baasha, and, depart from him so that he could leave out from me. So him doing this, they're trying to build this new place of worship, Ramah, and they don't have the support no more. So Baasha stops building from that building, and he leaves. All right, so continue.
Verse 22. Then King Asa made a proclamation throughout all Judah. None was exempted. And they took away the stones of Ramah, and the timber thereof, wherewith Baasha had built, and King Asa built with them Geba of Benjamin and Mitzvah. The rest of all the acts of Asa and all his might and all that he did and the cities which he built, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? Nevertheless, in the time of his old age, he was diseased in his feet. And Asa slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father. And Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his stead.
All right, so Asa, all right, told all Judah that they weren't exempt to go back now to Ramah and destroy that building, and they built up Geba, Benjamin, and Mitzvah. All right, so they changed that worship place and they changed it to something else, because Asa was about destroying the land and the stuff that's against God. All right, so he took all the worship images out, so he didn't want this building there, so he was able to get that taken down. All right, and Asa is a righteous king. All right, and now Jehoshaphat is coming in his stead. All right, well, now we're going to go to the violation that comes to Jeroboam. All right, that's exacted onto him. Now we're at 1 Kings 15:25.
1 Kings chapter 15, verse 25. And Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, began to reign over Israel in the 2nd year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned over Israel 2 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, and walked in the way of his father, and in his sin wherewith he made Israel to sin. And Baasha, the son of Ahijah, of the house of Issachar, conspired against him, and Baasha smote him at Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines. For Nadab and all Israel laid siege to Gibbethon. Even in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, did Baasha slay him, and reigned in his stead. And it came to pass, when he reigned, that he smote all the house of Jeroboam. He left not to Jeroboam any that breaded, until he had destroyed him, according unto the saying of the Lord, which he spake by his servant Ahijah the Shilonite. Because of the sins of Jeroboam which he sinned, and which he made Israel sin, by his provocation wherewith he provoked the Lord God of Israel to anger. Now the rest of the acts of Nadab and all that he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And there was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days.
All right, so we're seeing now that what happened to Jeroboam. Now, who exacted the penalty? It was Asa. Asa made sure to go and kill all that family of Jeroboam. All right, and that's who exacted that penalty on him. So we're going to see the penalty that's on Baasha. All right, so continue for us.
1 Kings chapter 16, verse 1, page 20. Then the word of the Lord came to Jehu, the son of Hanani, against Baasha, saying, Forasmuch as I exalted thee out of the dust, and made thee prince over my people Israel, and thou hast walked in the way of Jeroboam, and hast made my people Israel to sin, to provoke me to anger with their sins, behold, I will take away the prosperity of Baasha and the prosperity of his house, and will make thy house like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat.
All right, so here we're seeing again, the Most High is saying, look, what you did, I made you come, put you in place of Jeroboam. You did the same thing. You provoked me to anger. You did the worship stuff again. I'm going to make your posterity just like Jeroboam's house. The only house that the Most High had mercy on, we can see, is David's house. That's how the Messiah is able to come out of that. Because David kept all the stuff that the Most High told him to do. That's the only reason why his seed line is not eradicated and the Messiah is able to come out of that. All right. Everybody else seed line we see destroyed. All right. And now we're seeing the same thing. Baasha is going to happen to him. What happened to Jeroboam's family. All right. But continue.
Verse 4. Him that dieth of Baasha in the city shall the dogs eat, and him that dieth of his in the fields shall the fowls of the air eat. Now the rest of the acts of Baasha, and what he did as his might, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Baasha slept with his fathers, and was buried in Tirzah, and Elah his son reigned in his stead. And also by the hand of the prophet Jehu, the son of Hanani, came the word of the Lord against Baasha and against his house, even for all the evil that he did in the sight of the Lord, in provoking him to anger with the work of his hands, in being like the house of Jeroboam, and because he killed him.
All right. So Elah takes place. All right. So we're going to be at this final little part right here. We're just going to show what happens with Baasha's house and who comes in instead. And that's where the story will stop for today. We're going to stop at Ahab, who we're going to stop at, and we'll start from him next week. All right. So we're going to go to Elah becomes king and what happens now. All right. That he's king over Israel.
1 Kings chapter 16, verse 8. In the 26th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Elah, the son of Baasha, to reign over Israel in Tirzah 2 years. And his servant Zimri, captain of half his chariots, conspired against him, and he was in Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, steward of his house in Tirzah. And Zimri went in and smote him and killed him in the 27th year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned in his stead. And it came to pass, when he began to reign, as soon as he sat on his throne, that he slew all the house of Baasha. He left him not one that pisseth against a wall, neither of his kinsfolks, nor of his friends. Thus did Zimri destroy all of the house of Baasha according to the word of the Lord, which he spake against Baasha by Jehu the prophet.
All right. So here we're seeing Zimri, all right, the servant of Asa, all right, and he goes and he's destroying the house of Baasha, all right, because Jehu the prophet spoke the word of it, and now it's happening to him. It's coming onto his house. So we're seeing how the destruction and the wiping out is happening because of violating the image of God. Violations on the image of God bring about these destructions. Starting from Solomon, whose love we read his records. There's no mercy for this. You must have some penalty. All right, David, because he answered and because he followed everything the Lord did, there is just mercy given, but his seed line is still punished. It's still being eradicated. It's just, okay, for David's sake, one tribe, one individual, one seed is being restored out of the whole bunch because of David, just because of that one thing, or else it would have been wiped out. All right, so continue.
Verse 13. For all the sins of Baasha and the sins of Elah his son, by which they sinned, and by which they made Israel to sin in provoking the Lord God of Israel to anger with their vanities.
All right, so here it just says, oh, to making them sin, but what we're understanding is not just sin, because that's what we understood. Oh, they're sinning. It's violations against the image of God. It's not just sin. All right, it's a categorized thing that's happening. They're violating the image of God. That is the sin. And the violation of the image of God is various sins that take place that God looks at as these are things that I eradicate for. This is not, okay, you know what, son, I'm sorry you did. This is stuff that I'm going to eradicate you for. All right, it's a serious thing. All right, and why they could be doing other sins or stuff, but it's Satan that's making their focus to always come back to the image of God, going back to the focal point of the story. Satan is warring against the image of God, and he wants to take down the image of God, which is Adam, and he's convincing mankind to do these various things that sin against it. That's going to make the Most High go against the image of God. All right, and the Most High is trying to build back his perfect image of God again to that point. All right. So we're at the final part here. We're going to go to 1 Kings 16 and 21.
1 Kings chapter 16 verse 21. Then were the people of Israel divided into two parts. Half of the people followed Tibni, the son of Ginath, to make him king, and half followed Omri.
All right, so here we're seeing the kingdom is already divided in two. Now under Israel is being divided again in two. All right, under the tribe of Israel. We're seeing one king pop up. All right. They're following Tibni, and then they're following Omri. All right. So the kingdom is being split again in amongst the Israel. All right, the 10 tribes. But continue.
Verse 22. But the people that followed Omri prevailed against the people that followed Tibni, the son of Ginath. So Tibni died and Omri reigned.
All right, so it was split in two again, but Tibni died and Omri reigns now. The people rebelled against Tibni, he dies, Omni's reigning, and it's back to one individual again. All right, but continue.
In the 31st year of Asa, king of Judah, began Omri to reign over Israel 12 years. 6 years reigned he in Tirzah. And he brought the hill Samaria.
He bought.
He bought the hill of Samaria of Shemer for 2 talents of silver, and built on the hill, and called the name of the city which he built after the name of Shemer, owner of the hill Samaria. But Omri wrought evil in the eyes of the Lord, and did worse than all that were before him. For he walked in all the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and in his sin wherewith he made Israel to sin, to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger with their vanities.
All right, so he steps in Omri now, and he's doing evil worse than that were before him, and he's walking in the ways of Jeroboam, and once again, he's provoking God to anger. The image that provokes, the worship, the idol worship. So there's an image that provokes, and there's things that provoke the Most High. There's an image that provokes, and this is the opposite image of the image that God, of God. All right, and we're gonna stop there. So we see that God is serious about this provoking and this way we handle and deal with the image of God and these violations that happen. We're getting to look at what happened before the flood with Cain, Abel, the time of Enosh, the people worshiping the idols now. All right, the angels coming down having children, the giants now building huger idols than before, what God has to wipe out now via flood, various things. All right, we went down onto Israel now. We see with Saul, we didn't see what I just referenced with Saul. Saul just didn't listen to God. Once again, not listening to God is a violation of the image of God too. That's what Adam did as well, and he got punished for that. Saul got punished for that and removed. But we continue the story with David. All right, David never fell from the Most High. It went to Solomon, and Solomon fell. And from Solomon doing that, we're seeing the kingdom split in two. We're seeing enemies come, and we're seeing that they're trying to mend what's happening, but every time it's being mended, it falls into place again and again and again. And we're going to see the build up to where, you know what I mean, this is what they're doing. They're in Israel trying to stop this bleeding that's happening from Solomon, and it just keeps trickling down to all the people. There's various people that stops it, but the impending penalty is coming upon Israel, and that's what we're going to get to next week, where it's about to come. All right, a couple more violations. We're going to see the final violation that sets the Most High off, that just brings about the whole, all right, you guys are going into captivity now and all of that. It's going to take us right into the New Testament, right into our mindset on what's happening to us, all of that. All right, so this is a very good topic that we're on. So once again, I want to say blessings. All right, hope everybody is able, we're getting to understand the timeline of the Bible, the things that are happening, why it's happening a little more, even though people know these stories already, but the emphasis was never on the image of God and its relation to it, the different violations, and why God's so angry, and how this all starts from Satan and Adam, and not dealing with that image and bowing down to the image of God and worshiping it, and now his attack on the image of God and making the image of God, other replicas of the image of God, violate its own self. All right, and this is where we're at. And then it comes down to Israel, and Israel not understanding, and them violating and following the Gentiles. All right, because the Most High is trying to preserve at least one nation, one king out of these people. He's trying to preserve one of his images out there. He's not trying to eradicate all mankind. Going back to Noah, he saved the one family. He doesn't want to eradicate, but he wants to preserve the image of God. He wants the image of God to be in the way that he had it made. All right. So with that being said, we're going to go to Philippians 4 and 8.
Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true.
Whatsoever things are true. So it's true that this whole thing is coming back from the image of God. All right. Violations of the image of God started back with God making Adam in his image, Satan violating it. It's true that these biblical stories, the main emphasis of the story plot line is God made an image of himself and something didn't want to worship it in creation, and from there we're seeing violations back on the image of God. That's the emphasis of the story. All right, continue.
Whatsoever things are honest.
All right, and it's honest. It's honest that we have to be real with these violations of the image of God. Because when we look into the scripture, there's serious impending penalties. We've seen a man of God. We've seen Solomon. We've seen people that's loved have to suffer the penalties of this. All right, so don't think, oh, God loves me. No, he loves Solomon. He loves all those people. All right, but the penalty has to come. Continue.
Whatsoever things are just.
All right, so it's just. These things are just. As much we see the man come and ask about his son, and the Most High said, you know what, because the son was righteous, give him a grave. It didn't say spare his life, all right, but give him a grave. And this is just judgment that he's doing. The rest of them got scattered about. He's like, yo, that one, people should pay respects to that one, all right? But this is just judgment, even though it sounds rough. All right, continue.
Whatsoever things are pure.
All right, this is pure. What is he trying to do? He's zealous because he's quick to purify the image of God, the violations that's happening. But he warns and sends warning and tries to make them recorrect these things first. All right, continue.
Whatsoever things are lovely.
All right, and it's lovely when God has his image of God there, like in the beginning when he set up Adam and Eve and he looked at it, he's like, this is good, this is my image. Everyone bow down and worship it who's outside the image of God. Everyone who's outside of the image of God, we need to understand, needs to bow down and worship that image. continue.
Whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do. And the God of peace shall be with you.
All right. So those things you heard, seen, through, you do these things. Stay away from violations of the image of God, and the God of peace will be with you. He will not bring these impending penalties onto you like we've been reading. All right. So next week, most high willing, we get into part 3, get into more understanding on this. With that being said, we want to say our praises be unto the Most High Almighty, Yahweh Christ, our Lord and Savior, who the world calls Jesus Christ. Ignorant. And we're going to get to that too, because that all has to do with the image of God. This topic's going to cover all of these things. All right. But this is the SC Community Church of Christ. My name is Archbishop Shamar.
My name is Bishop Tabak.
And this was your Sabbath report / lesson. All right. Enjoy the rest of the Sabbath day. We have the Lord's Day coming up tomorrow. We do honor both of the days. All right. Knowing that the Sabbath day was given under the old covenant. All right. And it resembles the 1,000-year rest. It's going to happen in the 7,000th year. And then we have the Lord's Day, which is the 8th day, representation of the new heaven and the new earth, which is promised to come after the 7th day. Both of these days we represent and we honor. We know that they are things that are foreshadowing things to come. So we have people coming and coming, but what about the 7th day? What about we honor both of the days. All right, here at the SC Community Church of Christ, we have that understanding. Satan has put the two people against the 2 days that have to do with each other. All right.
It's like pick one.
Yeah, pick one. No, we pick both. We don't pick one. All right. So with that being said, blessings to all, and enjoy the Lord's Day tomorrow. Shabbat shalom. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Happy Sabbath. Happy Sabbath. Strengthen yourselves through the week. Rejuvenate yourselves. We're going to hit you with a prayer to get yourself back right, and enjoy the rest of the week. So peace and blessings.
Happy Sabbath.